thank you for being back here tonight. And I'm Anne, and together with Valerie, who's also here, we have founded the ethical agency Role Models Management. So we are a model and talent agency on a mission to represent models that have a voice to speak with and who wants to change the world. And so the whole basis behind the agency is to really come together and start creating networks where we can support one another and help share each other's stories, and in each other's companies, start making moves in the entertainment industry, in fashion, and really start building pop culture that can change the world and change how we see the world. And so we're super honored to co-host this summit with all these amazing speakers and with you guys. So let's kick off tonight, because we have a truly meaningful evening here tonight. And as one of America's top leaders in diversity and inclusion training, Dr. Stephen Jones of Jones Inclusive is here to share insight on racial discrimination. Also, activist, actor, and star of CW's Black Lightning, Christine Adams is here, is tonight's host, and she will be discussing her thoughts on expanding her work as well. And we are honored to have international Kundalini master yoga teacher Krishna Kaur to guide us through groundbreaking grounding breathwork and meditation, so that we can be centered and present to retain this really important information that we're here to gain. And at the end of everything, Dr. Jones will actually, after everything with Dr. Jones' conversation, we will open up the floor to a question-led discussion. So if you have any questions come up during this evening that you want to ask any of the panelists, please just pop it in the chat window, and we will try to answer as many as possible. And if we're not able to get back to you tonight live, we will answer you later. So don't worry, just whatever comes up, type it down. We will try to answer as soon as we can. And yeah, that is about what we're going to go through tonight. I don't want to take up too much time because we have incredible speakers, as you know. And now I would like to introduce you to our host, Christine Adams. And Christine is currently playing Lynn Stewart on the hit TV show Black Lightning. That is what I just learned, available on Netflix. So as you all know that you have Netflix, you can go and watch that afterwards. She's also a mother, wife, optimist, and she calls herself a hopeless romantic. Christine, we are thrilled to have you here tonight. So thank you so much for hosting.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, everyone in the Hope Summit. I'm really excited to be here. You know, I'll speak honestly, this has been a very difficult few weeks, and for all of us. And when you guys approached me and asked me to be part of this, you know, 4 weeks ago, I didn't feel like much of an optimist, and I certainly didn't feel like a hopeless romantic. And, you know, in that time, in that 4 weeks, I've seen so much growth and so much hope and so much potential. And I've realized how much I need to learn and how much learning I've got to do. And I'm sure we all feel the same way. And, you know, I'm really committed to listening. But being an actor, one of the big things about being an actor is listening. That's what you do. And I think in this moment, I think it's so important that we do that with open hearts. Let's not judge what we know or what we don't know. It's a new day, and I'm so excited to share this experience with all of you this evening. So I hope that's a nice segue into a lovely meditation with Krishna Kaur.
Satnam, Satnam, everyone. It really is a pleasure to be here. I just love this group and all the things that they're doing to really help us understand what's going on around us and find our space and our place in it. So yes, I'm a yoga teacher. I've been teaching Kundalini yoga for, well, maybe over 40 years. And I find that it has changed my life. My previous life was theater, and I loved it very much. But I find that this one gives me a chance to really serve people in a different way. And so I'm very excited that I have the opportunity to do that and to be with you. So I wanted to say that we're opening a space here, a space to understand what we might have been missing in our relationships with people of color or Black people around the world. Toni Morrison said, not everything that is faced can be changed. Not everything that is changed can be faced. So I urge us to think about just being where you are, you know, being where you are, being who you are, being relaxed with that, not feeling the need to rush and try to fix something or save something or change something, but just to open the space for you to be more of who you really are. The scientists keep telling us that we're using 10% of our human potential. 10%. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm good with that. But if we boosted that up to like 40%, how about 50? How about 65%, you know? And that's what this process is for. We were blessed with this pandemic. It was a chance to sit still and think about ourselves and what's going on around us. And then right in the middle of that came Black Lives Matter, which really expanded our brain and our mind and our hearts to say, wait a minute, what have I been thinking? What have I been living for? What am I missing? So in the yoga community, especially with the Kundalini yoga people, we do a lot of work on breath. The breath is so important because the breath commands your mind, it directs your heart, it opens up your ability to see things clearly, it opens your intuition. Intuition is the ability to see and know in an instant what is true and what is not true. And that's important. In an instant, to recognize that, it helps to pull back that reaction, you know, so that we can act and not react. We can respond in a way that makes sense, not just for you or me in the moment, but for the whole scene. So I have planned for us a beautiful meditation. It's called 4-breath meditation. 4-breath meditation. It's going to help us develop that intuitive process, that ability to intuit things, and to open up the third eye, the eye of awareness, so we can see. And that's an eye which, which I learned that before the time of Atlantis, it was governed by the pituitary, which was at that time about the size of a golf ball. Now, our pituitary has shrunk so much, it's about the size of a small withered up pea, you know? So no wonder we're struggling to try to figure things out, you know? The result of the internal processes that were designed to really give us the ability to go deep inside and tap into that subtle energy that we have and use it to open the space. So here's the meditation. You're gonna place your hands, fold your fingers up like this. Extend the index finger up and keep the thumbs locked. You're gonna place your hand right underneath your chin. Your eyes are gonna be looking down. You're not gonna bow your head though. You're gonna keep your head up and just roll the eyes down so that you can see a little bit of the tips of your fingers. I want you to relax your shoulders, your lower back. And everyone else to mute, please. Thank you. You take a few deep breaths in and just, well, before we do that, bounce your shoulders. Bounce, yeah. I'm gonna relax these shoulders. These shoulders carry a lot of weight, a lot of responsibility, a lot of thought. I want you to let them go. Let them go. Let them go. Okay. Replace your hands at the heart. Look down at the tip of your fingers. Your mouth will be open like you're drawing a large volume of air, and it'll touch the back of your throat. So you're gonna breathe in through your mouth in 4 strokes like this. Then you'll inhale one long breath out through your nose. 4 strokes in. Through your nose, breathe out. Beautiful. And continue that movement. We'll do it for 11 minutes. I'm gonna play a little bit of music behind you, just to give you a chance to relax into it. Don't fight it. Relax with it. Roll with it. It's there for you. Just embrace it. And you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. Just be you in this moment, because that's the only moment that matters right now. The only moment that matters right now is this moment. Keep relaxing. When you breathe in, you're breathing from your waistline, not from your upper chest, from your waist. Yeah. Your eyes are barely open. You can see. Fingers are right underneath your nose, right under your nose. 4 strikes in. 1 long deep breath as you exhale the breath out. Final 3 seconds, few seconds rather, enough for one complete round. And once you exhale, lift your eyes up and open your arms out to the side with your palms facing up. Stretch them out like you're just expanding your embrace of life, of the world, of you in it. Hold the posture and exhale. Once more, inhale deeply and stretch under your armpits. Stretch. Exhale, relax the arms down, close your eyes. And just sit still for a moment. Just sit still for a moment. Om Namo, it means I bow to that creator, that divine wisdom within inside of myself. We all sacred women hold in us the divinity that is so sacred and so powerful. Through our words, through our thoughts, through our being, we send that vibration out. There's nothing more powerful than the prayer of a mother, than the prayer of a woman. And through our prayer, we can bring balance, we can bring clarity, we can open the door for greater understanding, because you will help to build your intuition, which means you will know in a second what is true and what is not true. Thank you so much for sharing this moment.
Thank you, Krishna.
Thank you.
That was absolutely wonderful, and I didn't realize how much I needed that. I think it's the first time I've really been still in quite a few weeks, really still. So thank you. So I'm very excited to introduce our speaker, Dr. Stephen Jones. Dr. Jones is the CEO of the Jones Inclusive. He is nationally known as one of America's top experts on diversity. Dr. Jones' philosophy is to lead with listening to support his clients in finding a solution and a strategy that works for them. And something that I just read on his bio, I can't believe that wasn't at the top, is that Dr. Jones is the first person of African descent to be ordained as a Buddhist monk at a 700-year-old monastery in Thailand. That sounds like a whole evening by itself, doesn't it, Dr. Jones? I'm so excited to hear what you have to say. And I think it's probably easiest if we start by, telling us who you are and how you became involved in this work. So I'll let you lead, and thank you in advance for teaching us so much already.
Thank you. Let me say, Krishna, it is an honor to be in your presence. Thank you very much for that blessing. I believe the universe is in divine order and there are no accidents.
Yes, that's true.
and so it is truly a blessing to be here with you.
And me with you, I must say, thank you very much. I know your background, I know who you are, so thank you. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I grew up in a very small town in Louisiana called St. Martinville, Louisiana, and I was talking with my siblings recently about experiences that we had growing up, and one of my siblings called me up and she said, I was thinking about whether we have had and experienced any racial biases growing up. And she said, initially my response was, no, we haven't. But then she went on to, interestingly enough, tell me about a conversation that actually my older brother and I had literally the week before. And she said, I realized that I had normalized racism. You see, in my small hometown, we had a Black Catholic church, and within a mile, there was a white Catholic church. There was a Black funeral home and a white funeral home. My grandmother would take us swimming on Wednesdays, which was always a treat for us. And then we realized that we could only swim on Wednesdays because they cleaned the pools on Thursday. When we went to the theater, there was a small window on the side where we would go and pay and then proceed to the bottom area of the movie theater, because that's where African Americans were allowed to sit, and the white individuals sat in the balcony. And part of what was powerful for me was how she had realized in that moment that our life, we weren't using the word diversity, we were just calling it life. And I think that there is a major transformation that is happening in individuals, in communities, in our companies, and in our world and in our country, where people are being challenged and taking the opportunity to really identify where have we normalized racism, right? Where have we normalized the outcomes of our hiring process? You know, I was talking to a company recently, and they said that the one person said, you know, I realized that I had viewed, and this was a white woman who was a leader in this company. She said, I realized that I viewed racism and not being a racist as a value system, right? She said it was a belief that I held that I didn't think much about until someone told me that they thought an action that I demonstrated was racist. And then she said I would pull out that belief that I hold and defend myself and say, I'm not a racist. And she said, but I realized that that was a passive value system for me, right? And she said, in the last 10 days, she felt like she had gotten 20 years of schooling because she was going through a transformation where the idea of shifting from not being a racist to being an anti-racist was requiring her to move from a passive, colorblind, color neutral, value-based perspective to an action, proactive, reflective, systems assessing and evaluating perspective. And it was tough because while she was saying this, she was in tears because she said that for her, it was painful because she realized that she had to be a part of the solution, and part of that challenged her to look at where she had normalized racism, where she had sat still and sat back and sat silent as she heard colleagues, friends, families make biased statements. You know, Christine, when I was growing up, I used to want to create a pill that was my solution at actually in the third grade, to solving racism.
Mm.
And my third grade solution was that we could take the pill that would allow us to be any color that we wanted to. And in that way, people would experience multiple colors, culture, and lives, so that they would realize that color is not the problem, that we are all human and we are one. And being a part of the human race means that biologically, right? The Human Genome Project shows that we are 99.99999% the same.
Mm.
Yet we make 90% of our judgments based on the 10% that we see. And so for me, my purpose and my passion is to say, how do we create an environment? How do we create a reality? How do we create a way of moving in the world where we learn to see ourselves in each other? There, by the grace of God, go I. Where we understand that our differences are equal. But that also requires us to manage our brains. I love, Krishna, when you said we use 10% of our capacity. Somebody told me once, they said, we process 11 million bits of data per second. And yet we have the ability to consciously process only 40 bits. Do the math. That means most of what's going on between your ears and mine is happening beyond our awareness. And so I say that to say that both the shift from not being a racist to an anti-racist requires us to move beyond good intentions, right? The idea of managing our brains requires us to move beyond good intentions, but instead to manage our brains, because our brains pull files to manage those 11 million bits. All of us have experienced this. How many of you have met someone who reminded you of someone you did not like in the past? How did that impact the way you dealt with that new person? Not good. Your brain's going, I've seen you before. You've got some trust to rebuild with me. It didn't go so well last time we met. And you see, this becomes important because part of what we help organizations and leaders understand is that when we're making decisions about who to hire, who to promote, who to develop, right? There's this thing called similar to me bias that says, left unmanaged, my brains will want me to spend more time with people who are more similar to me. Left unmanaged, while I'm trying to be bias free, my brains will want me to give more grace and space for mistakes to people who are more similar to me. I will attribute all of my strengths and none of my weaknesses to people who are more similar to me. People who are more similar to me will seem less threatening and require less force to detain. And so the idea of really, as a kid, I always wondered what makes people do the things that we do, right? And that has been a big part of my journey, is to figure out what causes and drives me to do the things that I do. And I want to read something really quickly, which for me was, I believe, to the extent that we know, love, and understand ourselves is to the extent that we're able to know, love, and understand others. The root starts with loving oneself. And I was trying to figure out kind of when I saw George Floyd's life force being taken right before us as he gave a play-by-play, hoping that another human being would hear his words and respond with human compassion to no avail. And as I was watching this, I was thinking to myself, and actually I wasn't thinking much, I was feeling, and I was in tears. And I tried to put words to understand what was the deep pain that I was experiencing. And I wrote this. That could have been me in Central Park. That could have been me jogging in the neighborhood. That could have been me with a knee severing the breath and flow of blood to my brain. That could have been me pleading for a human connection in each situation where I was no longer being viewed or treated as human. Wait, that was me. That was me shot down as I struggled to take away the weapon of hate pointed at me while taking a simple jog. Wait, that was me having the police weaponized towards the color of my skin and that identity of my culture in ways too numerous to count, that apologies do not erase the lynchings, both metaphorical and real, historical and present day. You see, a knee on the neck achieves the same goal as the noose around the neck. Wait, that was me having life choked out of me as I gave the play-by-play of my depleting life force to no avail, no relief, only to be heard by my mother, who had passed away through the pearly gates of heaven 2 years earlier on the same day. As the onlookers and video recorders predicted my fate to deaf ears that pressed the entire weight of history to intentionally repeat history, another Black man's life taken by someone representing institutionalized power and white supremacy. Another Black man's life taken without cause. My life taken without cause. That could have been me. No, that was me. Wait, that is me. You see, someone told me, they said, as a mother, when they heard George Floyd call out for his mothers, the hearts of mothers around the world cried out. And this idea of really working to say, how do we work to regain our own humanity in order to see the humanity of others? And I find, Christine, that there's a, I think, a shift that is happening that is making this time different. Because a lot of people are asking, will it be different this time? What do we do? How do we find hope in what is occurring? Somebody asked me once the other day, they said, how are you, Dr. Jones? I said, you know what? I am COVID tired, I'm Zoom fatigued, and I'm racially exhausted. Right? A couple of things that I think are making this time a little different. One part is we are still in the midst of a global pandemic called COVID-19, where we have taken unprecedented steps to keep ourselves safe. We have disrupted systems. We have shut down schools. We have stayed at home, sheltered at home, became homeschool teachers. The world worked collectively to keep ourselves and each other's safe. We stayed away from loved ones, grandparents who we thought would be at risk or we would place at risk. And we learned the symptoms of COVID-19. And just when we understood the symptoms, we learned that there are asymptomatic carriers. And we told everyone, act like you have the virus and everyone else does. And then, as Krishna said, this second global pandemic called systemic racism showed its ugly head. And just as we managed COVID-19, where we demonstrated how far we would go to keep ourselves safe and each other safe, we are challenged to answer the question, how far will we go to keep ourselves and each other safe? Will we be willing to act in unprecedented ways? Will we be willing to disrupt systems that support institutionalized racism? Will we act like everyone has the virus, including ourselves? And how do we understand the symptoms? You know, I heard someone say, they said, you know, it's interesting because I watch where people place their rage to understand a little more about them. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, there are some people who are saying it's bad that a Black man was killed, but we have got to stop destroying property. We've got to stop looting. And then there are other people who are saying it's horrible that we're destroying property, but we've got to stop killing Black people. You see, the sequence of those two concepts makes a world of difference in terms of understanding where we are placing our priority and communicating where we are placing our priority. And so I think COVID-19 and the way that we have moved, you know, I think about it as there was pre 9/11 and then there's post 9/11 ways of moving. I think there is pre-COVID-19 ways of moving, where we used to say it's going to take time to end racism. It's going to take time to see greater diversity at the C-suite levels of organizations, on production teams and sets and in leading organizations, so on and so forth. Pre-COVID, the message was, it's going to take some time. Post-COVID, we changed in a heartbeat. 5 days, universities transformed from in-person to online. Remember when people used to say, I don't think you'll be able to work a lot if you work at home. Right? Remember when we used to say, we spend more time at work than we do at home. Those concepts are concepts of the past. I would suggest to you that our work in regaining our humanity during these times causes me to add another feeling that I have after the racial fatigue that I mentioned, which is I am future hopeful. Because my 80 and 81-year-old parents in Louisiana, who are both retired, married for 60 years, said to me, I never thought I would see the day where so many white people were marching to end racism. People around the world move from passive to active. And I'm going to pause there, Christine.
Myself. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Jones. What a beautiful poem. And you know, it's painful to hear that, and I so want to acknowledge how difficult it is to kind of share your pain that way over and over again. It's something that we've had to do as Black people, and it's difficult and it's upsetting and it's traumatizing. And I know for a fact that this has been a really hard few weeks for people in the community because they're absorbing all of this stuff. And, you know, one of the things I wanted to sort of, you know, I wanted to touch on was this idea of sort of unity. And how it feels like in this moment, humanity has been able to sort of get beyond COVID, an impending economic crisis, and head out into the streets. And I know for me, as a sort of someone that always wants to find hope and optimism, I feel that we've really seen what human beings are capable of. And even though we're in this moment where they want us to believe that we're divided, that's what they're banking on. And actually, the truth is we're not divided. We are the same. And I think that's what this movement, you know, when people are protesting in small towns in Midwestern Ohio, something's happening. You know, when people are spilling out into the streets of London, hundreds of thousands of people, something's happening. So I imagine in terms of the shift, this must feel quite profound for you. I wanted to kind of wrap my thoughts in around yours, if that's okay. And you know, obviously now in this moment, everybody's asking, what can we do? What can we do? You know, we've read the books, or we've got the books, they're by our bed, we haven't read them all. And we've watched the movie on Netflix, and we've seen the 13th, and that's all amazing and well done to everybody. But I'm a very sort of action-oriented person. And as someone who's been in Los Angeles since 2003 as an actress, I've seen some strides towards towards diversity. But, you know, I'll give you a sort of anecdotal experience of when I came to LA in 2003 as an English actress. And I remember at the time I had cornrows. And my first manager said to me, "Oh, you'll have to get rid of that. That's too ethnic. They won't like that." And, you know, when you talk about sort of normalizing racism, the actress in me who just wanted to please and get the role said, okay, I'll take it out. I'll straighten my hair. I'll get a weave. I'll do whatever they want, right? Then I spent the next however many years going around doing my auditions, constantly trying to be what they want and assimilating myself into their version. Now, their version was the white version. But I didn't know that because that was normal. I didn't know that, you know, an actress could actually wear her natural hair because everybody at that time was saying, absolutely not. People won't like that. Audiences won't like that. It's too threatening. So in 2003, those were normalized conversations in the circuit, in the TV world. Obviously now, you know, we're in a slightly different landscape, and we've had, you know, people like Ava DuVernay and, you know, Barry Jenkins with Moonlight, and, you know, but I still see a massive, Black Panther was incredible, but I still see a massive deficit in the people on a production floor, or maybe the people making decisions, or even the actors. And I think as much as Hollywood likes to say that they're shooting for diversity, there's a real disconnect between what that actually means and saying it. And, you know, Hollywood, like most institutions, have been based on nepotism and what school you went to, what school your dad went to, or your mum went to, and that's the problem. And for me as an actor, you know, I feel like what we need to do, and again, you know, you can speak to this, Dr. Jones, is how do we encourage, nurture, mentor young people who are interested in our respective fields? How do we find them? How do we make them feel safe? How do we accept that they're not coming from a place of privilege that, like, somebody who's white and went to a great college might have? You know, they might be late for work because they don't have a car, right? These are real things that we have got to accept and sort of really start thinking about, because if we don't have those people at the bottom, we're not going to have them at the top. There won't be a Black executive at the top until there's a young Black PA on the floor learning the ropes. You know, we've got to bring them, we've got to grow them, because we need 100 Ava DuVernays, we need 100 Stephen Jones, we need 100 Barry Jenkins, we need, do you know what I'm saying? There's, that well is dry. So there's no point thinking that we're going to have all this change, because in the halls of power, there's no Black people. And the only way we're going to get those people in the halls is we've got to go to the source. We've got to go to schools. We've got to go to community. We've got to, you know, we've got to go to kids and let them know that there is real opportunities. And then we've got to bring them in, and we have to nurture them with time and attention and care and focus. And that is the thing that is hard. And I think that's why it hasn't happened. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to listen to you, Dr. Jones. He's muted. There we go.
Okay. I so appreciate, Christine, what you've shared, because I think it is, we've got to create a multi-layered and multi-leveled approach. Because I was in a meeting today, and this executive said, you know, I can't find qualified Black people in the profession.
Yeah.
Right. And we know that oftentimes we are in, whether it's a professional Black association or whether it's the networks that we're in, and I will be at conferences with thousands of professional Black people.
Of course.
And we're sitting around going, we're right here. Like,
Yeah, right.
why can't you find us when we can find us? Right? And there are HBCUs for days that people don't build relationships with. And instead they go to the same schools that they have gone to before, where there might be a small population of Black people, right? And then go to those places because they quote unquote have the pedigree, or they feel like a cultural fit. Which means they're more like the people who are making that decision.
Exactly. And I think it goes back to what you're saying about this is the discomfort.
Yeah.
If we don't go into spaces, and when I say we, I mean white people, if you're not prepared to go into the spaces where you don't fit, you're not going to make those new connections.
That's right.
And yes, it will be uncomfortable to go to a HBCU and sit in a room with, 300 amazingly qualified, name your career, but that's what we've got to do, because going back to my point, I have had to assimilate myself to get into your rooms forever.
Yes.
Forever.
Absolutely.
So if we reverse that and think, okay, well, why don't you assimilate into our spaces?
That's right.
And see what happens.
And what we have heard when companies make the decision to go into those spaces that are predominantly African American or predominantly Black, they have oftentimes a surprisingly inclusive and welcoming experience.
Of course.
Right? And so it's the myth that prevents the action and creates the paralysis, as opposed to the experience. It's the narrative that we tell ourselves. And here's where the commitment to starting to build the pipeline gets complicated, because young people today are oftentimes going onto companies' websites and looking at the C-suite to see if that organization has experience recognizing talent in the package that they bring. And when they don't see a leader who reflects back who they are, right, then they may choose to go somewhere else. Right? Because they're going, well, you haven't figured this out.
Yeah.
And here's what we're also seeing, especially in Hollywood and the entertainment industry. Many organizations are bringing in young Black and brown and LGBTQ people and people of all communities who understand systems and don't expect to experience bias and discrimination of any ethnic background. Right? They expect to see inclusion. They expect to see our computer systems communicating with each other as well. But they expect to see, right, diversity and inclusion. And they understand that whether it's a microaggression or an overt bias, and here's what they're doing. They're being involved to sit, they're being allowed to sit in writers' rooms. And when they hear the normalized bias, they're going, that's unacceptable. And I can tweet about it. I can call HR. The role of youth, as we are seeing them today around the world, every generation pushes the current reality forward. We saw it in the 60s. We're seeing it today. Right? And so that idea of that young people around, I heard someone say there's a multicultural movement that is happening. And I'll just tell a quick story. We were working with a middle school and we were training the parents, the faculty. It was on a Saturday. A group of about 8 middle school students came up and asked what we were doing. We said, we're doing diversity training. They said, oh, us too. We're focused on diversity. And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, we're working on a play and we noticed that there were 4 couples And we noticed that all of the couples were heterosexual couples. And we said, that's not acceptable. That's not our reality.
Yeah.
So they spoke to the teacher and said, we want to change one of the couples to be a same gender couple. And they said the teacher had to go and talk to whoever the teacher had to talk to get the approval. And then we got the approval and we changed. You see, the normal that many young people are growing up in is very, very different, right? And,
Yeah.
and then, you know, and then there's one other piece that I want to mention real quick about, somebody told me once, a joy shared becomes twice the joy. A pain shared becomes half the pain. Part of telling our stories and our experiences, because many people see the anger, but they don't understand that the anger is fueled by pain and hurt. Because to see the pain and the hurt means you'd have to see me as a human being. And so we also have to help our community understand that we don't want to disconnect or numb ourselves from the pain, because
Right.
if we do, we numb ourselves from our own humanity. Right? So there is a benefit, not for anybody else's education, but to maintain and sustain our own humanity, which is why I so appreciate that we started today, Krishna, with breathing. Because there are many places and spaces where people stop breathing, where people put on the mask, I'm going in, right? People put on the hair that causes other people to feel like, you know, they're accepted, but then I can't breathe. And isn't that what George Floyd, isn't that what Eric Gardner said? I can't breathe. There are many places where we are not breathing. And part of this work is what Reverend Al Sharpton said as he did the eulogy and he spoke at George Floyd's funeral. It's time for folks to get their knee off our necks, symbolically, in their own minds, right? Because there is so much work that shows that diverse groups outperform groups that are homogeneous. Don't do this for me, do this for you. Right? Because we have to remember that when we turned an African into a slave, we also turned a European into a slave master. Both of us need detoxification. Both of us need to reclaim and regain our humanity. To not connect to someone else's humanity means that I have to disconnect from my own. This is not work that we are doing for someone else. When those individuals are marching, they are marching for their own humanity. And lastly, I just want to say about the hope for the change, Christine, that I heard someone say that it is white people's responsibility to end racism. And I heard that and I thought, well, wait a minute, let me think about that. But then I remembered we just celebrated a landmark decision by the Supreme Court that allowed the LGBTQ community to be included under Title IX as a form of protection. It was a majority heterosexual group that made that decision. When men gave women the right to vote, it was a majority men, if not all men, group who made that decision. When white people chose to sign the Emancipation Proclamation, that was an all-white group who made the decision to end systemic institutionalized racism. This is not about the hearts and mind. Leave my heart and leave my mind alone. Interrupt and dismantle the system of racism. Because it's the systemic part that causes people to say they won't like the hair, they won't like the skin tone, they won't like the, because that's what people saying, I'm an expert on the system and I know how to make movies that sell by maintaining the status quo. Right? And that's part of what we have to interrupt and disrupt within ourselves and interrupt and disrupt within our systems. COVID-19 showed that there was a disproportionate impact on Black and brown people in our healthcare system, right? And I want to be real clear that for me, this is not a blue lives matter, Black lives matter. This is not an all lives matter, Black lives matter. I heard a speaker say once, he said, you know, right now saying all lives matter is like this. Imagine that 10 people are sitting around a dining room table and 9 of them get a plate of food. And let's say Bobby doesn't get a plate of food. And Bobby says, I'm hungry. And the other 9 say, we're all hungry as they eat. And Bobby says, no, but I'm hungry. And the other 9 say, we're all hungry as they eat. That's what's happening right now as people say, all lives matter. And Bobby's going, yeah, but I don't have no food. Yeah, but when you see me, you decide that you need to use deadly force. Right? And so being aware of some of the ways that we play into, that we have been taught to, we know that many organizations or many families and many people know about the talk that Black people have with their Black kids to stay safe and come home alive. My question is, what's the parallel version of the talk for white people with their kids? You see, there's another side that has to activate and mobilize, going from not being a racist to an anti-racist. And many people have been taught the talk to have is be colorblind, be color neutral, don't see color. The intent oftentimes is don't judge color, but the message is don't see color. And being colorblind leaves us culture blind. And that's the damage, right? I would suggest that white people need to say a parallel version of what my parents told me. And my parents would say to me, Stephen, I need you to know that there are going to be some people who don't believe that you're as good as you think about yourself because of the color of your skin. And I said to them, Mom, Dad, come on. Dr. King has come. We've marched. We've sang. We're into the inside because I had my pill, y'all. I had the pill I was going to invent. Right? And my dad would say to me, come here, boy, let's talk. You see, I want to suggest to you that there's a parallel conversation where white parents could talk to their kids about, baby, I want you to understand that there are going to be some people who listen to you more than they listen to people from different ethnic backgrounds. I need you to recognize that. And when you see it, I need you to step up and say, actually, this person said that. You know, I think there are going to be people who think you're smarter than other people just because of the color of your skin. And I need you to let them know that you're as smart as the person next to you, who's that brown person who is as smart as you are. You see, there's an active role that white parents can teach their kids, similar to the conversation we need to have with boys about respecting women and girls. If we only talk to the young girls and the women, then the men keep doing what we've been taught to do, which is to oftentimes disrespect, even though we're taught sometimes to respect in some areas, but not in other areas, which was part of the power of the hashtag Me Too movement. But so many women told stories that had been silenced, normalized, or were just too risky or painful to tell. You see, there are Black people who are deciding to tell their story and are deciding to no longer keep white people comfortable in the ways that many women said, it's time for you men to change. And many men said, I don't know what to do. Because I don't know where the rules are. I don't know. Well, guess what? When the game changes, the rules change. It's time for a change. And that's the hope.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I know we're going to have some questions now, but you know, I think there's a lot of parallels actually with the Me Too movement, because what that allowed was, just as sort of racism has been emboldened in the last few years, it suddenly allowed people to feel empowered to share
Yes.
their stories. And
Yes.
once you out that kind of thing, it becomes a taboo. So
Mhm.
I know for me now, when I'm at work, if there's even a whiff of impropriety,
Yes.
I don't have to go to HR, because I can say, excuse me, you don't need to touch her blouse like that.
That's right.
And it's done. Everyone knows, it's out in the open. And
That's right.
that's how I think we need to kind of keep pushing this forward. And I think that's where, you know, white folks can be allies, because actually they can do the shouting, they can do the standing up, they can, you know, they're the ones that can kind of take that position. And I'm seeing all these images of, you know, white people standing at the front of the protest lines. That feels like a really good metaphor that, you know, we need you guys to be our advocates and say, actually, you know what, that isn't right.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And so anyway, let's get some questions.
Get it.
Thank you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure.
Okay, Dr. Jones, we are going to start with Liam's, who I think is Flora, right? She said, how can we continue to spend time with humans that don't have the same humane values? How do we contain the anger when they are so ignorant and racist and choose not to listen or change? I have chosen to stop talking to people because the rage is too much.
So this is powerful because I would like to say that I need white people to not give up on white racist people. I need you.
Laura doesn't look sure about that. She's not sure if she's ready. She looks like she might be ready to give up, really. Laura's like, I'm done. I'm done.
And here's what I mean. To give up is a privilege.
Right.
And to give up can feel like, if you give up, then guess what? If that person encounters me, then I have to deal with them. If you give up, then if that person is a principal or a teacher, then guess what? Our kids have to deal with them, or a police officer, or a judge. This is a tough fight. And in this fight, it's challenging because sometimes we hear those statements from the people we love the most. Absolutely. Absolutely, Flora. I feel you. Right? And
sorry, go on.
Please, no, go ahead, Christine. Go ahead.
One of the things I've noticed, and maybe, Flora, this is what's happening, is I totally understand what you're saying. The last few weeks there's been a real line for me in terms of like, oh, you're on this side or that side. And if you're not on this side, then you're dead to me, which again, talking to Dr. Jones, that's.
And I feel like it's not so much like I'm saying, you know, like, hey, I'm just going to give up. It's more about shit. Like, why? How did this happen? How do you feel that way when you're seeing the same picture? You're watching the same things. How do I continue to expose my children to that constantly? How do I tell my children it's okay, we have to go there, and I know that you're going to be uncomfortable with someone saying something constantly that just isn't right. This my children will either choose to say, oh, well, that person's just ignorant, or they will stand up and fight. But it turns into a fight that is just not, and hear me when I say, I know it's a fight, and I know that it's struggle, and I know that it's been years and years and years in the making. And it's like everything that comes up with the Me Too movement, with every like new issue that has come up, especially in the last 6 years, that it's just a constant, like, I came here for dinner and we're leaving because your brain doesn't think like mine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's no changing it because I have given you everything I've got
Yeah.
constantly for years. That
Yeah.
it just turns into how
Yeah.
I can't. And so now it's gotten to the point where if I see you, these are the things you're not allowed to talk about if it's going to be controversial.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
I leave. Don't say it around my child. Don't. I mean, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because that's, I can continue it, but will it ever change? And it doesn't feel like that. It feels like it's going in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
It feels like being more polarized because we're standing here saying like, this is inhumane for you to say things. This is racist for you to say things, but it's not changing the perspective.
So Flora, let me say, I'm not trying to tell you how to raise your children. Let me say that. That's one, right? But here's hold to everything that you're saying. And I want to say two things. Realize that, and I'm going to just say it this way, that Black people send their kids to a school system that teaches and produces what your kids experience every day in the curriculum.
Yeah, and I'm constantly having to re-educate them every time they come home
Right.
with misinformation.
Right. And I think that is part of the work that says, how do we support and armor our kids with the ability to discern and decipher?
They're
right?
very well versed in that, yes.
Beliefs that you want them to hold against the beliefs that they will be told, because they will be told and live in a world where they will be told white people discovered everything. They will live in a world where they will be told white people invented everything. They will live in a world that they will be told white people created civilization. They will live in a world, as your parents did, that were told white people are superior. They won't be told that directly. They'll live in a world where they will be told white people are normal. And people who are different are not normal. They're abnormal. What color was the first skin-colored Band-Aid?
Right.
Nude nylons.
Yeah.
They don't look like my nude skin. Right? And so part of our work is to say, and I use this example. I was called into a school to prevent a race riot with a group of skinheads, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and white pride individuals. And I learned that those are different. And a group of Mexican American students who were defending themselves against the white supremacists. And you ever had one of those experiences where you kind of have an out-of-body experience going, how did I get here? Yeah. That was me in that moment with a room filled with these students and myself and a security guard. And at that moment, I really wanted to listen to understand, how did these students get taught these ideas? And these concepts, because they were taught it. And if they learned their lesson well, which they did, then they were living out the things that they were taught. Jane Elliott has a video that she did with third graders called Eye of the Storm, right? And when she asked the third graders, who do we not treat as our brothers, because it was National Brotherhood Day, they had answers. Who did they learn those answers from? Right. And part of it is your parents were also taught and given answers. Mm-hmm. And they're acting on their programming and their education as much as you are and I am. I'm not saying that it's right, but I'm saying when we listen to understand, then oftentimes we can find a way to, right, give an experience that we would like to have returned back to us, right? And that's hard. That's really, really hard. I saw a speaker once, he says, I couldn't protect my kids from bias, so I biased them with multiple perspectives. so that anytime somebody tries to narrow their perspective, they know to keep an open perspective, right? And so I definitely hear you on and let me say, my parents have some very, very bigoted ideas about other dimensions of diversity. And I have had to say to my parents, you know, people used to say that about Black people. What you just said, people have said that about us. And my dad said, boy, shut up. But you know, I mean, hey. Right. So I absolutely understand that it's hard. It's tough.
It's painful.
It is painful.
And also, just obviously, Dr. Jones was way more eloquent in talking about that. One of my other thoughts about what's been happening in this last few weeks, and I know because I'm experiencing it, you know, through social media and reading people's responses and seeing how people react, and friends and family, and I think sometimes this feeling of, you know, racism coming towards you, or that anger or the pushback, is because we're making progress.
Yes.
And I think that's threatening.
Absolutely.
And I felt in the last few weeks, like, oh my God, I feel like people that were a little bit racist before are like more racist, and they're really coming at me, and they're really like, they can't wait to use a trigger, like all lives matter. You know, there's a lot of pushback, and I think it's because we're making progress. And I think the more progress we make, the more they are going to feel like they don't have as much control or power over that dynamic, and everything that they believed is being sort of decimated, and that's scary to them. So they're going to come at you, they're going to keep coming, but just know that that's because you're making progress.
That's right.
Do you know what I'm saying? That's
Absolutely.
how I feel like, oh, the louder you shout, the more it, you know, it's that saying, methinks he doth protest too much. I just had a really interesting email exchange with the headmaster at my kid's school to do with, you know, incidences that have been happening in a quote unquote very progressive school. And he really didn't like it. And he sent me a very unprofessional email. And I thought, oh, methinks he does protest too much. I'm saying something that he knows is right.
That's right.
He knows is true. And he knows that he's responsible for. So I'm making progress. Otherwise, why would he respond like that?
Yeah. So
I think don't be afraid of strong reactions. That's just people sliding down into a quicksand, you know, of this is nothing that I want it to be. So just keep going, you know, and it's anything that sort of, like you say, disrupts people's thinking is good, you know. Why should they feel comfortable? You know, let them be angry. That's fine.
That's right.
Dr. Jones, I think also part of the question in the chat is, when you're dealing with someone who doesn't think that they're part of the problem, like they've already arrived and we're open, and you know, what say to them to make them take a step back and what they're saying, and try to create some sort of change within them, because conversations are so important right now. But how do you initiate that with someone who doesn't think they're part of the problem?
Yeah. You know, we say that one of the hardest groups to train in the fields of diversity are white liberals and educators. People who feel like they have the best of intentions, and those intentions should be enough. And we view this work as a skill set, similar to math. I'm not born knowing how to do math. And if I take a Math 101 class and you hand me a calculus problem, would you be surprised if I couldn't solve it? No, because I haven't skilled myself up to the calculus levels. There are well-intentioned people who have a Math 101 understanding of racism faced with calculus levels of complexity. One person can be at the Calc 3 level around understanding gender bias and be at the remedial math level around understanding the transgender community. That same person could be at Math 201 around understanding the autistic spectrum, and that same person could be at Calc 2 around understanding racism and racial bias. I don't know anyone who's at Calc 3 on all dimensions of diversity. And good intentions do not equal your skill level.
Right.
Being nice can sometimes be, I have seen some people, you know, those passive aggressive people who smile as they rip you apart, who smile and say, and I had this said to me, Dr. Jones, you are so articulate. And I'm like, I'm a speaker. Like, what did you think I was going to be? But they don't stop there. Then they go, when you're not doing this, are you a Baptist preacher? And I'm like, I grew up Catholic. I can't help you. You know, who are you talking to? Right. And so the idea becomes we all have to skill up. And I'll just give you a quick example of why we say in this work, the moment you think you're done, that's when you're in trouble. Because this is a lifelong process. And I'll ask all of you real quickly as an example of helping people understand who think they're done. Do we live in a right-handed world or a left-handed world? What would you say? Right-handed, okay. Things that tell us we live in a right-handed world. Scissors are set up for right-handed people. Baseball gloves are set up, place settings, right? Watches, can openers, doors. We pledge with our right hands. We shake with our right hands. Ladles, the default of computer mice on computers, right? Coffee mugs, a right-handed person picks it up, there's a picture. Left-handed person, no picture. It's deep, y'all. It's real, real deep. Now, how many of us right-handed people wake up in the morning like this? Power to the right-handed people. The world is ours.
Yeah, right.
Right? How many of us right-handed people think, yeah, this is my world, I got it made? You see, when you're a part of a group that's in the majority, the group that's in power, oftentimes your group's culture, your group's norms gets institutionalized, made invisible, and you don't think about being a member of a group. You think about yourself as an individual and you move in the world, not realizing that you get to stand still on the escalator that still brings you up. Other folk are standing on the bottom rung of the non-moving sidewalk, and if they don't move, there is no elevation. And so we've got to find different ways to help people understand that there is a larger system at play that we all are being impacted by, and called systemic racism. And it's not about being a good or a bad person. It's about, are you a part of dismantling the system? Or are you staying neutral or blind or passive and allowing the system to continue? It's either racist or anti-racist. That's our choices.
What is the most effective thing that you can do to head towards anti-racism?
What do you think, Christine?
I think, do you know what, honestly, I feel like if we had that answer, then we'd be in a much better position. And I think, you know, the truth is, people, there isn't one answer. It's a complex problem and it's a marathon, and it requires deep, deep digging into all the ways us are responsible and part of this problem, and all the ways that we can dismantle it.
That's right.
So the answer is, there is no one answer. Unfortunately, you have to keep showing up. Show up for the seminars, the webinars, the TED Talks. Just show up. Show up for your friends. You know, reach out to your friends. Don't let the conversation dwindle. Don't be embarrassed about the conversation. You know, I noticed after everything that happened with George Floyd, again, there were two camps of people. There were people that came to me immediately and said, oh my God, it was almost like, if you guys haven't seen it, there's an incredible sketch called The Day Beyonce Turned Black on Saturday Night Live. And I want you to see it because it's kind of how I felt that week. I felt that half of my white friends were like, oh my God, this is what's been happening for 400 years? And then the other half just couldn't deal with it.
Yes.
They just didn't know even how to have the conversation, start the conversation. They were just paralyzed with shame and fear, and it felt bad. And I really think that you got to forget all of that, and you're going to have to, we all feel ashamed. I know you all feel ashamed. It's horrible. But, you know, I think the long-winded answer is keep showing up. Keep asking questions, keep talking to your white friends.
That's right.
Check someone's racism, just check it.
Yeah.
Even I've had to go back and think about times when I've let things go because I didn't want that person to feel uncomfortable.
That's right.
Shame on me. Shame on me, you know? So that's what I think you can do perhaps every day, you know, in terms of keep showing up, keep checking people, keep asking, keep listening. You know, I know you don't want to listen to another podcast, but I'm sorry, you're going to have to. Just keep going until it is part of your DNA, you know, and then we can start kind of going, right now, what do we do? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I love it because to connect to your point, it's about moving from white guilt and white paralysis to white action. Right? And let me be clear, when I went to the same schools that your parents went to, Flora, I learned the same messages as a Black person. There is internalized white supremacy in me. So I've got to do my own work. Because I know when I was going and wanted to go to a historically Black college and university, I know I was told by Black people that your degree will not be worth as much if you go there as opposed to going to a predominantly white university. And so there are skin color issues. There are issues within every community. My Latinx brothers and sisters and colleagues tell me that you know, there's this piece around, you know, if a child is born and they're lighter skinned, they're closer to white, they're celebrated. And if a child is born and they're closer to dark, negro, negrita, right? And so there's work for all of us to do in order to move to action. So to your point, action, Christine, and reflection. Right? Those two together are part of what keeps that ongoing, lifelong process of learning. And then lastly, I would say, don't expect perfection. So that if somebody tells you that your actions are racist, instead of freaking out, say, help me understand. Help me understand what I did, because I know that wasn't my intent.
Right.
So help me understand what I did that caused you to interpret my actions as racist, and then get in a learner's mindset. Listen to another podcast, right?
Just listen to all the podcasts. And then I know we've got to wrap it up, but I do, as a kind of spiritual community, and I know that you are a spiritual community, you know, everyone talks a lot about sort of vulnerability. I think vulnerability is a sort of concept that we talk about a lot in the spiritual world. We talk about it a lot in acting. How do you express vulnerability? Why is it important? You know, Brené Brown. And I think that's, I think that's the thing that we should embrace right now. We have to be vulnerable enough to allow ourselves to kind of grow, admit we were wrong, admit we messed up, admit we failed, and then come together.
That's right.
So I think, you know, whatever you want to call it, shame or any of that, that's just, you feel vulnerable and you feel exposed and you feel raw and that's okay. Like, we can grow from there.
That's right.
But if anything else is just not going to work. So let's be open with our fragility and our shame and our fear and all of it, and then I think that gives us a real opportunity for growth, don't you think, Dr. Jones?
Absolutely. It's like have you ever had somebody apologize to you but not know why they're apologizing?
Yeah, I'm English, Dr. Jones, so yes. That's basically what we do all day.
Right? It's a global thing. It's a global
Yeah.
thing. And you're going, I can't accept your apology because you don't know what you did, which means you may do it again. And you're not taking ownership, and ownership requires vulnerability.
Totally.
Right? So we've both got to own and be ready to learn and change. Right? And then hold each other accountable for the change and be willing to make the change. And it's lifelong and ongoing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But the bottom line is that we're doing it to protect our own humanity, to sustain our own humanity, and to see the humanity of others. This is in all of our best interest to stay active, big time.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh! I feel like I don't know, something's happened. I'm like 50 pounds lighter. Should we do this again tomorrow night?
I'll be here. Let's do it.
Wow, thank you everybody. Thank you for sharing. I'm Valerie. I was hosting last week, and my co-founder of my agency Role Models, Anne, was on earlier. So thank you everyone. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Stephen, thank you, Krishna. We also want to thank all of you guys that donated to the Grassroots Law Project. We've raised nearly $900, so please continue to contribute. It means a lot, and it's really making a difference. If you want to move on to non-optical allyship and really put your money where your mouth is, this is one of the things you can donate to. So thank you. Okay, and so join us next week. Next week on Thursday at the same time, we're going to be having this. We're going to have an incredible TED Talk speaker, manifest light and positivity. And also we want to hear more from you guys. So if you have questions next week, feel free to DM them to us, message them, put them in the chat, and stay tuned because we're going to be announcing a surprise guest early next week. So if you're not on Instagram, please follow her so you can see who that's going to be. But yeah, thank you guys all so much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Dr. Jones, and everybody. Have a great evening, and let's do the work. Bye.